Hey everybody, Tony D with a screenwriter's tip and really a tip and an expansion upon my comments on West Side Story, believe it or not. So I got a very nice civil comments, but discussion in West Side Story. People defending the movie saying, oh, it's going to be great. What are you talking about? It's a classic. Plus, it's going to be more faithful to the Broadway show and yada, yada, yada. The reason I don't believe that for a second is because in the world of corporate entertainment, marketing is everything, right? Because even a terrible movie or a terrible entertainment product, let's say, that the studio knows is a stinker can make money if you market it correctly. I'll give you an example. Snakes on a Plane, which I saw, and I thought was terrible. I saw it because for the same reason I think a lot of people saw it. Samuel L. Jackson was flacking at the time, and he was sort of at the height of his popularity. He's kind of a fun guy, and you thought, well, at least this will be a fun movie. And it was not the worst movie I ever saw. I mean, there were fun moments to it. But I think he clearly knew the product he had. I think he knew it was a not great movie, but that if he pushed it hard enough, it would do, moderate box office. And I believe it did. I think it did okay. It probably made its money back at the very least, which I think would have been a worry had they quietly released the movie and hoped for the best. Now, that isn't to say that actors shouldn't promote the movies. They should. That's part of their job. However, you have to understand that... Sorry, I got the windows open and the pollen's off the charts today, by the way. But in that respect, when it comes to marketing and when it comes to that kind of money, these actors are liars, essentially. I mean, they kind of know... They kind of know the good movies from the bad, and they kind of gauge their own exposure. I think Samuel L. Jackson, who I talk about kind of a lot in this area, is overexposed. He's been in too many commercials, too many movies, and he's kind of the same guy in every one. Not that he isn't fun, but people are kind of, or at least I am, kind of sick of seeing him. Could do without him for a while, maybe see him in a different role or a different capacity. And it's his career, right? So, if he just wants to squeeze every last dime out of it he can before he, ends up doing B action movies like Bruce Willis, then that's what he wants to do, and that's what are you gonna say? You're gonna fault the guy for trying to make some money? But from a fan perspective, you can't trust the actors ever. Because most of them at that level are contractually obligated not to say anything negative about the product. The rare exception was, I think it was Bruce Willis and Hudson Hawk, and he didn't really say anything negative about the movie. He just kind of implied that the movie was garbage, which a lot of people agreed. It was, I did see like half of it. It actually had a few hilarious lines in it, believe it or not, but it was an indulgent movie by Hollywood standards. It just was off the charts. Not really a good story, in my view. Not it didn't really come together. There was no urgency in it, which was a shame. It had James Coburn in it, and Bruce Willis, and Danny Aiello, who I think that movie may have killed his career, actually. And Danny Aiello sang in that movie too, I believe, and so did Bruce Willis, which is part of the reason I think Bruce Willis did it. Anyhow, my point is, corporate entertainment, the marketing rules. Okay, so when you see a trailer for a movie, especially one as big with as big of a franchise name as West Side Story, they're not going to risk that with any kind of creative risk, in my view. No. If they do, it'll be a very calculated creative risk. It'll be like, well, we're going to market it, this way. Somebody suggested that the Broadway show made more of Puerto Rican versus Irish kind of thing, and that is a theme for our time, and that they'll rely more heavily on that, which the movie got away from. Who cares? Okay, it's the Broadway show and the movie are classics, but they're long past their heyday. And really, West Side Story was just Romeo and Juliet. And Romeo and Juliet, the West Side Story cannot live up to Romeo and Juliet. And by the same token, I don't think a remake of the movie of West Side Story of the play cannot live up to even the movie. Because it was a different time. It was a time when, musicals ruled and people liked them, and it was edgy for its time, but movies had a bit of edge to them in the early 60s and into the 70s, where we hit the Renaissance, the sort of golden age of American cinema. That's not true anymore with a movie like this, in my view. It's directed by Steven Spielberg. It's put out by a huge studio. They're not going to take any risk. I hate to tell you. I hate to burst your bubble. Now, by the same token, creative people can go the other way, right? And what's also bad for the movie industry and creatives in general is to be too indulgent, too pretentious, and too sort of esoteric. You have to learn from those marketing people, even though they go too far in the big leagues, what you can do for your own movie. And some independent guys just refuse to learn that or ignore it and say, well, my movie's different, so therefore I can ignore the rules. You really can't. So, for instance, I'm big on titles. A title, I think, is key to a movie because you are essentially selling a product. And again, you're saying, oh my God, you're railing against corporate entertainment, and then you're telling me my movie's a product. But it is. So I met this comic book guy years ago, and we were arguing over comic books and how to present them. And he had a comic, I forget what it was called. It had a very esoteric name like Equus or something like that. And I'm not trying to bash him or anything. And the premise of the book was, it was about this guy, this alien type character. He was like a horse guy. Like that was his alien race. He had kind of like a horse's head kind of deal. And he lands on a planet, I think, of humans, and that was the premise. Fish out of water, alien guy. And I said to him, part of the problem with your comic is the title. It's called whatever it was. I think it was Esquis. I said, I don't know what that means. It implies maybe horses, if I'm kind of educated just enough to know, well, equestrian, equus, maybe it's horses. But that's it. Like, I didn't understand anything about that comic from the title. And while I'm in the comic book store, I'm looking at the racks of all the titles, and what do I see? I see Spider-Man, Superman. Now, I know what those are because they're famous comic books, but I also know what they are even if I wasn't aware of Spider-Man and Superman, right? Superman, well, I see it, he's got a big S and a cape. Superman, I get it. Spider-Man, kind of a costume, makes him look like a spider. It's got webs on it, he's shooting webs. Spider-Man, I get it. Like, everything about the cover tells me what's inside. Equus didn't tell me anything. So I said, what you needed to do is rename the comic like Stranded on a Planet. See, that would have told me, oh, it's a comic about a guy who gets stranded in this medieval world, and he's this horse alien, blah, 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 blah. But like those few seconds I'm scanning the comic rack, I get it. I get what his comic's about, and if that interests me, I'm going to buy it. Equus, I go, what's that? I don't know. Next comic. And it's the same thing with movies. In any entertainment product, you got to have a title that is evocative of what it's about. Now, a lot of times it's just the main character's name. Like, I just looked at the movie Sweet Tooth. That's the character's name. The movie's called Sweet Tooth. Okay, sure. But if, say, that wasn't the character's name, it was just called Sweet Tooth because the character has a sweet tooth, no, that would be a terrible title. Unless it's about eating. Unless it's about a guy who can't stop eating sweets, it's not really giving me anything other than, a tiny portion of the movie that isn't as important. Thanks, Joan, for ruining the take. Isn't as important as, telling me something like A Guy on a Journey. Now, I'm just throwing out titles. I spend way more time thinking about titles, so, don't slam me on the titles off the top of my head, because you should be thinking about your titles very, very carefully. Same thing with your trailer, same thing with your synopsis. You should be thinking about them to tell people and communicate what the product is. Because if you communicate the wrong thing, even if you have a good product, they'll be pissed off. And that's part of the problem with, I think, studio movies. A lot of times, the marketing guys will see, for instance, there's a big revelation in the movie, and maybe that's the biggest moment in the movie. Some of those ruthless marketing guys look at the rest of the movie and say, well, I don't see anything else here. Make sure that's in the trailer. And that could give away your whole movie. And it's happened. It's happened in the history of movies. I've seen trailers where it gives away the whole damn movie. And you watch it and you go, well, I don't need to see that now. Another incident, I'll just tell you, is Terminator 2. Spoilers. The scene in which Arnold Schwarzenegger shows up in Terminator 2, and it's revealed that he is a good character, was the clip they showed on The Tonight Show. Ruined the movie for me. Didn't ruin it. I still love the movie, but it ruined that surprise. But that's the marketing guys. That's the marketing guys showing off the movie, showing off Arnold Schwarzenegger, making sure you're going to see the movie regardless. They don't care that once they have your money, you're out and going, oh man, you ruined the movie for me. They don't care about that. What they care about is you went into the theater and got the cash. So in the world of the studio, there really should be a line there where a creative person should make the call at a certain point. No, you're giving away too much of the movie, or no, this isn't, you're misleading people about the movie. Creative people should have that kind of input in a studio. They usually don't, unless they're very big names. And even then, extremely rarely that they would even do it. Whereas, indie movies, you pretty much have all the control anyway. You're cutting your own trailers, you're trying to get it seen. So you need to, in my view, cut a trailer and a presentation that shows the audience enough without giving it away, but you want to use the positive aspects of these entertainment giants and learn from them and how they market things. So, if you have a mystery, you want to market it to mystery buffs. So you want to look at other trailers from other famous mystery movies and see how they were cut. You want to look at other mystery movies before you even shoot the movie. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. And you have to know that if you're in a particular genre, that other people, who have seen that genre or love it, are going to be your core fan base. You need to know that information so you don't reinvent the wheel. But at the same time, you can appeal to their sensibilities because you understand them, because you know the product. And that's often a problem too, I see, with movies, and even with studio movies. See, part of the problem with the new woke regime in Hollywood is, on the one hand, you've got, veteran directors that they're putting under the gun to be woke, and those guys, they already know what they're doing. They don't need your woke lessons. But on the opposite end, you've got new female BIPOC directors who they're afraid to touch. They have to give them carte blanche to do whatever they want. That can be too much, especially for a new director, because they can become too esoteric. They could spend so much time huffing their own farts that they create a product that only 10 people are really going to connect with. You know, if you're doing a comedy, it's crucial. It's very crucial that people have a common ground. That's why a lot of comedies take place in high school, or coming of age movies connect, because everybody comes of age. So it's the broadest audience possible, and everybody in America can relate to it. Because when you're talking about comedies, you're aiming it at an American audience. But when you're talking about hitting the, quote, new audience that Hollywood's aiming for, which is this bizarre cut of the population, which tends to be slightly older female and lesbian, you're talking about a much smaller group. You're talking about the group that is going to laugh at certain things that no one's going to connect with. So there's a balance to be achieved. And West Side Story, in my view, the remake, is just another tone-deaf cash grab, right? It might be Spielberg's dream to have remake it because maybe he's such a big fan. He'd be in the right age to be that kind of fan. But judging by his previous track record, I don't think so. I mean, it is a different project for him. I don't think he's ever done a musical, but, you know, he's kind of an older guy. I don't even know if he's really all that hands-on it, really. It could be the kind of thing where it's a nerd doing his own nerdly interpretation of what theater majors want to see, and him putting his own, studying judiciously as nerds do. But nonetheless, he's still a nerd, and he's coming at it from more of a nerdly perspective. I say nerd in a positive way. I consider myself a nerd. So, I don't have high hopes that West Side Story is going to blow the doors off of anything. Mostly because, the wokerati will probably get on Twitter and give us all sorts of reasons to hate it. And the songs are old. They were classics in their time. It's great to have Rita Moreno. I'm glad to see her out and about. But, I think at this juncture, what we really need, what we desperately need, are more comedies. God, do we need more comedies. Outrageous comedies. And I think the reason we don't have them is comedy has been killed by the woke. They have made everybody petrified of doing comedies, of offending anyone. And most people in the woke are on the left. Most of the left controls Hollywood. Ergo, forget it. You can't get one greenlit. I think the next breakout thing will be someone, somewhere, God willing to shoot a comedy. If you need a script, give me a call.